2020 Decoded Podcast, Season 3, Episode 13.
Let's mount up.
Let's go. Lots of O's there, people. Lots of O's. How are you going to mount up for Monday?
So I loved about our on-ramp, like whole bunch of great suggestions that I think we have 25 subscribers to the YouTube channel. I saw the other day. So all of them get the free to listen to content and all the bonus content. I wish there was a way that we could sort of share the on-ramp in some way for our Decoded Patreons.
Wouldn't it be awesome if, for those people, the subscribers, that we had just a live feed for them? Like we could do like a closed door, a walled area where we just provide them with live content. And the only price of admission is that you subscribe. That's it. Like if you don't, we don't want your money. Let's see if I can meld some of the on-ramp with what I'm about to say. I am so sick and tired of teachers getting other teachers to pay for stuff that's free. It's killing me, Chris. It's killing me at the core. I'm investigating why. I truly am. I'm thinking about, why am I so bothered about this? Why is it taking up my mental energy and my mental space? But I'll tell you something. I don't want anybody's money. I would love to have a frank discussion about education, about edu-celebrity, about, why some people need to hear certain things from other people in order for it to happen, or in order for them to become more competent, or think that they're becoming more competent in the classroom. It's killing me, man. So the only ticket for me would be that you subscribe. If you subscribe and you follow, then you get access to SOB Productions. The Shed Outback Decoded Podcast.
Was it Shed or Shack? I think it was the Shack Outback.
The Shack Out. I love the SOB part. I was actually looking for shacks and sheds, copyright-free pictures, so I could create a graphic.
Yeah.
And which brought me joy. So if you people can imagine, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm watching Disney Plus. Okay, I'm watching.
Is it worth the investment?
We paid for the year, so it's like, here's my $95 for the year.
Yep.
Take my money, and I'm just gonna watch. So, is it? I think time will tell. Like, I'm enjoying access to it. So far, I've watched a few things that I felt like, okay, my money's gone, and I've had some enjoyment. Like, because the money's gone, I feel like I'm really relishing some of these shows. Like, I watched The Mandalorian, and that was worth it. So right there, they got my money. That was worth it. I watched a documentary about a guy who climbed a mountain without any gear. That was worth it. And so right now I'm watching this thing about the Disney Imagineers. Totally worth it. So they've got my money for the year, and I'm living it up. Oh, Captain Marvel. I've been wanting to watch that movie forever. I finally got to watch it, and that was worth it. So whatever, they got the money. So anyway, I'm sitting on my couch. I'm watching this awesome documentary about Disney and the people that they hired to, future think and to do, basically innovators that didn't know that they were innovating. They're like, here's your job. Oh, and by the way, I want you to do this. But that's not my job. Do it anyway. You can do it. I've been watching that. So as I'm watching this, I'm surfing on the net for shacks or sheds in backyards or that type of thing, so I can create a graphic for the SOB part of our Decoded podcast thing, which is hilarious because this is more than just a podcast.
I love that you get a giggle out of it. It's just like
Well, just SOB Productions. What I just
No,
love it. I love
it worked out. It's one of those we stumbled into an acronym that just happens
to
to
fit
work.
in more ways than one. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I love that we can play around with these things. But back to the on ramp. It's killing me that people. It's not killing me that people are doing their thing. Okay, so if you're out there and you're pushing a product or you're doing something with yourself and your brand, I don't have an issue with that. Go nuts, have fun. I'm starting to have an issue with the people who are buying into your BS though, because some of what you're doing is just nonsense, in my opinion. Just like, some of the stuff I do is BS, but I know it's BS and I'm kind of having fun with it. So I think there might be a difference there, maybe not. Um, Nobody's buying into my stuff, but there's like hordes and hordes of people that are loving every minute of some of these, what I would consider dumb things going on out there. So I love that we're going to continue to do dumb things, Chris. I love that we don't want anybody's money. I'm doing it for fun. If it can make me giggle, bring a smile to my face, I'm in. I'm in. Let me mount up. Let me get on my way. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to the table right now. We haven't spoken in like 2 weeks, eh? Has it been like 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The original cast, drawing here. Let's see if this will even reach. I don't know if that shows.
It shows. December 14th, scratched out, January 4th.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so like, where there's the see there's the inside content, right? We gave away free inside content behind the curtain, the desktop of the drawing.
To anybody who's listening, to the 25 people who subscribe to YouTube, and maybe some of the people listening who just listen whenever, I know we've done this before. I would love to hear. I would love your questions about anything you hear us talk about or see us talk about or draw or whatever. Questions about behind the curtain type questions, because I think that's what's been eating me up for a long time. These people who are out there doing these things, and then somebody asks them a behind the curtain question, and that's it, you're blocked, right? Because those are dangerous people. You people with your questions about behind the curtain stuff, like how does this work, and who got you into this, and how do you do that, and they just shut you down. They don't want to talk about it's the magician that doesn't want to talk about how their trick is done. And yet more people become magicians, right? So they find a way in. But I think it's how you do it. I think you and I could easily get behind the curtain. And when I say easily, it's not easy. I mean, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some finesse. It's going to take a major time investment. But I'm willing to say, if somebody wants to drop me a line and say, what does this mean? Or what are you talking about here? Chances are I'm going to let you behind the curtain almost instantly, rather than, try to get you to hang on for a while so I can sell you my book, or I can get you access to my website for a lower cost than what it would normally be. I think I'm tired, man. I didn't get into education to make money on the side in education. If I want to make money, I'll find another way. Like I'll find another job. I'll find something on the side. But this niche of educators making money off educators within the education portal is really rubbing me the wrong way. It's really rubbing me the wrong way. And today's the day that it's coming out.
Why do you think? Why do you think the whole call it the sort of like the big EDU, the big E, um, business end of EDU? Why it doesn't? Why doesn't have? Why isn't does it? It doesn't feel like the same machine. I'll say in Canada, but I don't really know Canada. I'll say, you know, I'm I purposefully pursue people that are talking EDU in my social media um, searches. So, and I'll admit, I primarily use Twitter. That's all. I'm not on Facebook anymore. My Insta feed is more of a creative. I tend to kind of exist more kind of family stuff, creative stuff there. So Twitter's the space that I'm going to. And I realize that's a closed hallway. It's not giving me as wide a view as I believe I'm getting, because there's still a whole lot of stuff that just doesn't ever go there, and people that are having, you know, um, they could be potential contributors to my learning, and that's not their space. They don't use Twitter. They use other spaces. For me, it's the most convenient, but it just doesn't seem like that whole celeb space is really saturated with CanCon. Like it's really, there's a few people out there, but it seems like if you are Canadian, you're still looking to hit the American market in order to really get the treads on the road. So I don't know. I've thought about that quite often, about why, and almost with maybe some unfounded pride, that Canadians aren't like that. We don't do that. We don't do school like that. But I don't know. Edupreneurs, edupreneurs, and what that looks like from a Canadian perspective, and to keep it a Canadian perspective, it's a bit. They seem to be a little bit elusive. So I don't know. I can't say exactly why that is. I don't know if I need to sort of know exactly why that is, because I think it is something that I've noticed, that there's just not Canadians that are pushing um, that jet set lifestyle of the edutainer. I don't get it.
Well, you had mentioned in the on ramp that it might have something to do with, um, how well Ontario teachers do in terms of pay scale and stuff. Like, I would argue that an Ontario teacher is not in a poor financial position. Number one. Number two, I think that for someone to go out and really jet set into the edutainer world, you're taking a lot of risks. You're taking a lot of risks because you're going to have to take time off work. If you really are an edutainer, you're going to have to take time off work, which is probably going to cost you in terms of your pension, right? It might get you into trouble with your school board in a way. Um, they might force you out, or they might say to you, yeah, you can go, but when you come back, this position won't be held for you anymore because you're asking for time off without any, you just want to be away from work. Okay, here you go. You've got your 6 to 8 months off, but when you come back, a new year will have started and we may have placed you somewhere else. So I think in the US, and hey, if any of my listeners care to tell me if I'm wrong or whatever, that's fine. I'd love to hear it. But maybe in the US it's different. Maybe in the US, the edutainer looks at their job and then looks at edutainment and realizes that they can make more money in edutainment. And so they go because they have a family to feed or whatever they're up to, right? It's not the same, I don't think, in terms of like the whole pension thing and the seniority thing. I don't know, but they seem to let it go a lot easier there than they do here. I can only think of one person who left the classroom to do their I don't even know what to call it, to do their to go out into the world and to spread their message, is Brian Aspinall.
Dude
I don't
hustles.
I'm just saying he's the only
Yeah.
one I know that actually left an Ontario school, with good benefits and relatively good pay to go out on his own and do his thing. He has to hustle. He has no choice. If he doesn't hustle, he doesn't make money. And if he doesn't make money, how's he going to live?
Game over.
He's the only one I know. There's a few people who seem to want that lifestyle, but they've not pulled the trigger. They're still in Ontario schools.
What about, is it Sunil Singh? Has he,
Oh,
I think he's Canadian? Yeah, he's Canadian, isn't he?
he's Canadian. He is.
And I'm trying to think of, because sometimes I don't really clue into where the person is positioned within education. Sometimes people are very specific. They'll say, in their profile, it mentions their state, their district, their whatever. And then sometimes other people are just kind of posting up the stuff that they're doing. And I don't recall, but I think I remember part of his story. He has it's sort of like that disillusionment story. I think I could be completely Sunil. I apologize, but something that I've observed is that there's some disillusionment story that says, I wasn't happy with this sort of thing within EDU. So this is what was part of me shifting away to kind of do my own thing.
That's my take on it as well. I don't know 100%, but I believe by reading tweets and his responses to people over time, I got the vibe that there was some kind of disillusionment, and he's not in the Ontario classroom anymore. But he's got a book, and I think it's through the Pirate Publishing Network.
Mm-hmm.
Is Brian's book through the Pirates as well? I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. All the code breakers.
Yeah, I think code breakers are, because I don't remember the roots, but I think Kuros has Impact. I think Impact is a subsidiary of DBC. And I think under Impact, maybe you have Kaza Todd and Aspinall. I don't know. All that can be, you can totally thread that. I mean, you can go often when I'm checking to see what the family lines are. I'll just go to Amazon. It's just the fastest way I find. I can look, and you just go down to the details, and you can see, you get all the publisher information.
Mm-hmm. George Couros is another one who, not Ontario, from out west.
He's Alberta, I think, isn't he?
Something like that. Yeah, he was a principal in the system, and I don't believe he wasn't a principal in a school at the time that he stepped away.
System principal.
Yeah, system principal. So my understanding there, and it could be wrong. My understanding based on threads on Twitter, of all places, is that he was a system principal, and then he may have taken time away from the position and then at one point left it. And so I think he's now independent, and he's doing his thing. Other than that, I don't, you don't hear about them as often as our American counterparts. But their system's completely different. And I think some of these edupreneurs or edutainers are finding that they can make a better living by doing that instead of being in the classroom, which in a way is very sad, right? You become a teacher to help people, to teach kids, and then you realize that you can't make a living. Or you discover something, right? You bump into something on your journey and you turn that into your paycheck, be it coding, digital citizenship, innovation and leadership, and you run with it.
I gotta say, any of my peeps that have actioned some of that belief system, even if I completely disagree with what they've created, and or I kind of think to myself like that's just like there's no value to me, or I could disagree with it in principle. The one thing that I am mind blown at, and part of it is that I'm ignorant. I don't know the process of shifting passions like that. Like I am someone that has developed my career through common system tools. Like I've applied for jobs, I've done interviews, I've looked at a very narrow list of job opportunities and sometimes felt like I was being courageous by interviewing for a job within a very safe system. Like it's a very it's understood. We are taught how to go to a job interview. We know how to do our resumes. All of that is so um, so simple relative to manifesting your passion. And again, regardless if I'm, just not into your content, and a lot of the stuff I'm not, it doesn't inspire me, it doesn't connect with me. I am often inspired by that step away and being able to sort of take a thing that, whether you have a position, I'll talk about from education, you have a position, a product, or a point of view that you feel needs to be expressed. You're driven to express it. You go through the legwork of developing whatever that product is and then get it to market, and all the while survive. So this type of life of creating your own career doesn't exist in a nice, tidy bubble, I imagine. You still got to put food on the table. You might have a partner you're living with who has a day job, and maybe they're having to fund part of this initiative. You're having to do travel. You're having to do these press junkets. You're having to sort of constantly be on. And it is one of the sort of luxuries, let's say, of you and I doing this podcast, is that we can put down our insights and our offerings and a little bit of our edu-comedy that we throw down. But it still is we're sitting in a certain element of privilege that, we go back to our publicly funded job on Monday, and we get to sort of exist on weekends and have these sort of like critical conversations about EDU, and the same people that I'm saying that, I'm sort of wowed by the work and the hustle that it would take to put together a life from a passion project. It's one of those kind of interesting moments, because a lot of classrooms do passion projects, and have the kids work on these things that they entirely could shift into some sort of entrepreneurial, or sort of take it away from school and keep working on it. Like it has a real life analogy for them. And I just, on one hand, I don't have to say that I don't have the bravery to action, because you and I have, like, we've talked a lot about a lot of different products on this, and then we kind of giggle and we sort of move on, like talking about the glasses and our kombucha and our publishing company, like all these things. Someone is listening to us and saying, like, what's up with these guys? Like, why don't they action it? Why don't they move forward with something? It's funny that I feel in some ways we're kind of cozying up to some ideas that could very well, at the heart of it, what would it take to activate you and I to actually do the stuff that we comically comment on? We could totally connect with that individual that makes kombucha. We could do the Shack Out Back kombucha. We could, get our equivalent of we start hitting the Waterloo markets, farmers markets. We could digitally produce a book. I think we have enough content, at least for a really interesting storybook. We could produce that. What would it take? And it's not that I'm being more philosophical here, because I don't think we have the time to sort of tease that entirely apart. But that's what kind of being able, the fact that I asked that question means that that my commentary on EDU is anchored to a very safe space. And for my colleagues that have decided to go out there and write that book, good on you. Colleagues that have decided to sort of leave education, because it's not leaving education, it's leaving the comfort zone of a constant paycheck. And there's a whole lot that goes along. Like, kudos to them. Even if I don't dig what you're selling, I dig the fact that you sort of stepped up and you did something. You did something about, your conviction. That's cool stuff.
Well said, Chris.
Thank you, Roland.
You really got on there. It was nice to hear. You notice I did not say anything. No, not for me. Sure. Maybe it was too much for somebody else, but I give 2 thumbs up to these people who want to follow something other than that. They're in the traditional model of education. They decide it's time to punch out. Like you said, I don't necessarily agree with their product or their point of view.
I often don't. That's what I find. I often don't.
Why do you think that is?
Because it doesn't match up, because I'm not their market. That's what I'll bring it down to. I'm not their market, but yet I get their commercials. That's what it kind of comes down to. It's the
you see the commercial, you can break it down, but it's not meant to come at you.
Well, yeah, because I'm aware that I'm not their target market, but I have to tolerate their marketing. So, and maybe sometimes the value of what they're selling is more about reminding me of the work that not reminding me that I need to do the work that they're selling. It's not reminding me that I need to develop the certain craft that they're sort of talking about, or the Google product or the coding. It doesn't tell me, it doesn't inform my practice in a way that I say, yeah, you know what, I gotta add that into my practice. The whole robotics in the classroom, I really need to get on that. That so rarely happens to me with some of the more tropey offerings that happen right now in school. And for me, some of the tropey stuff that keeps popping up is whether you're robotics, coding, sketchnoting, animation, green screening, these kind of things, like that doesn't connect with me. So it kind of reminds me that even though I don't give a crap about that stuff to develop it in my classroom, I appreciate it on a level of reminding me what is going on in classrooms. So at least it keeps me aware of kind of what's happening out there in EDU, even if I say to myself, yeah, I'm not going to buy your book. I'm not going to buy your book. It's a good reminder to sort of keep my eyes open, so that when I am in conversations with people, it's like my whole pursuit of trying to figure out who's in my feed from the United States and asking questions about what it's like to work in a district, aka a school board that doesn't have a union. How are rules kind of decided state to state? Like, it's such an alien space. So yeah, it's kind of just, it keeps my antenna up so that I'm kind of aware of what's going on in EDU.
You raised a good point. It makes me think about when you're talking about you're not their market, what their product is in their marketing and how you're exposed to the marketing. I have learned so much from watching them market their stuff. In fact, you and I have spent time breaking down and talking about the techniques used. I find, see, that's where my passion lies. I enjoy that part of it. I'm not interested in the product. And and I see people eat it up, and that kind of is annoying because they're not seeing it's meeting their need, I guess. Somewhere along the way they have a need and it's being met. But watching the marketing machine, observing the engagement with other people, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me. That part, I enjoy that. So I think, somebody might say, why do you stick around? If you don't like any of this, why do you stick around? Because I'm fascinated by the process of marketing to people. Fascinated. I love watching the interactions, and that's what social media can allow me to do. It allows anybody to actually observe and pay attention to and possibly jump into different conversations, um, different ways people are communicating with other people and how they're reaching them. Fascinating to me. So, like you and I have talked about this before, there's a flip side to everything. So here I am telling you that there are these edutainers who are out there doing their thing. I want nothing to do with it, and yet I still stick around. I'm sticking around because I'm enjoying the darker side of it. I'm looking past the product. I'm looking past the hype. I'm reflecting on my needs. Is this something I need? And if it is something I need, then where can I go to get it where I don't have to pay for it directly with my cash? Okay, so like I'm being relatively open here about my process, and I'm kind of showing you behind my curtain what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. So these are the things that I think. So somebody puts out a product, it's a book, let's say, about whatever topic. Okay, how about virtual reality? Let's pick on VR for a second. Is this something I need? I start there. Is this something I need? Do I need to do more VR? Is it going to help the students in front of me? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, okay, well, I don't want to give away 25 bucks for this book. So I'm going to start looking in other places to get information about VR, possibly can teachers in my PLN. You know how many times somebody's come at me with a question about 3D printing or whatever, and I totally just answered their question. Or recently with esports, I refer them to blog posts that I've written. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just saying I documented this process on purpose. So that if people asked me, I could send them right to what I did, exactly what I did at the time I did it, so that you get exactly what I did. You don't have to pay for it. It's right there. I'm going to help you. I benefit from saying that I help somebody. That makes me feel good. That I guess fulfills one of my needs. But anyway, do I need this? If I do, then I will find it somewhere else. But I'll still pay attention to the conversations being had and stuff because I enjoy watching that process. I want to see, how does this edutainer respond to this type of question? And you and I have talked about that some edutainers get upset pretty quick and back right away from any kind of discussion. And their perspective, from what I've been able to infer, is that they feel like they're being attacked. They feel like people aren't being nice to them. People are being mean. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But what I'm saying is I've observed a lot of people ask a lot of good critical questions that the edutainer takes as an assault, as an attack. And and I'm like, well, it doesn't look like an attack. It's a question I've had. I could ask you the same question and you'd probably tell me I was attacking you, but I'm not. I'm just asking the question. I've seen that happen. I've seen them back right away. In fact, I'm having a hard time thinking of an edutainer or an edupreneur who has achieved a high level in that realm that doesn't back away from the hate or the meanness. I'm having a hard time, and maybe it's because I can't think of because of the bar I've set for the edutainer, how high they've gotten. I know some edupreneurs that are totally open to sharing their process, and they are selling a product. And for me, it's easier for me to swallow that. And if I know the person, that makes a big difference too. Like I've met some of these people face to face, and I consider them to be good people from the conversations I've had. It's not to say that the people I've not met aren't good people. It's just when you have a real life connection, it can change your perspective. So that's why I stick around. I enjoy watching the marketing. I enjoy seeing, okay, what's this person going to do here with this, and how are people going to react? I enjoy watching the conversations. I've jumped in here and there, um, and I've seen things go south fast, which is it's sad because I've seen conversations start in a really good and honest place, and then I've seen it go bad because, in my experience, it was the edutainer who had their backup almost immediately, probably because of their prior experience. I get that, but it's still fascinating. And so you and I, we have fun with our shack out back, and the decoded products and the book that we could write and have available for people for free, which would be awesome because I think all our content, no, all our content is waiting for us to compile. It's not hidden anywhere. It's out there, and you and I have just, we've had an eye out for it, and so we see it. We can make the connections because we're looking for it. But we could totally produce a document for people because that's what they want. And
Hyperdoc.
there are.
Let's brand it, right? It's a hyperdoc, right?
And here's the sick part. I think people won't look at it because we're not attaching a monetary value to it. I think if we say, hey, we've got something for $30, there's a group of people that will give it a good look because it's worth money, which means it's got to have some kind of value. But when you give it away for free, some people are like, well, it's got to be junk if it's free. People don't just give stuff away. That brings a smile to my face.
I like the idea. So you got me thinking things like, if we decided to have some sort of a Patreon, it makes me think about whether or not that if the funds that we got in would just go to setting somebody else up with like podcasting equipment or like their own, like a subscription on something like Podbean, like to get them set up so that they can start kind of doing their kind of pursuit of similar stuff. Because at some point, we do pay, despite the fact we're doing free development here. I mean, we have to pay to have, just the equipment in our house. That's the privilege of our actual podcast. That's the invisible, a little bit of decoding there. Like we can't do what we do like this. We've had to sort of suck up some of the cost. But individuals that maybe were willing to pay for content, they get like a gift certificate for Zencaster or Podbean or Libsyn, for them to try and their hand at kind of pursuing the same professional conversations with others just to get their content out. Here's a question for you. Do you believe that you could find, so anyone that has published we'll say, let's keep it tight to EDU. So any topic that you are interested in understanding about EDU, developing your understanding or to reflect your understanding, do you think that you need to ever buy that person's book? Do you believe that there's enough of any one person's content out there that you would never actually have to buy the book that they're selling? That they've probably posted it somewhere, it's already there for you to view, to sort of consume. And this is kind of a different space than, let's say, when did Twitter was out like 2006, 2007, something like that, I think. So there was a tipping point there where all of a sudden you could be exposed to someone who had kind of been doing their work in secret, like kind of doing it away from digital. They didn't start on digital. They weren't blogging. They weren't necessarily posting. And all of a sudden you have something like Twitter as an accelerator, right? With all the links and the connections and whatever. I'm kind of arriving at this space where I honestly think to myself, there is no need to ever buy someone's book. And I don't know if this is one of the main challenges of the publishing industry, because if you can do some research, and if you're comfortable doing research and kind of checking out backstory and following and chasing links, and you're willing to read threads, do you think you could get far enough in order to kind of like take the baton and do what you need to do with it? I'm seriously questioning. I think we're coming into that space where there's almost an irony in someone that has a strong Twitter feed and 100,000 followers or whatever, that people are still buying their books. A lot of reasons why you would buy the actual book, but back to the original question, do you think that you could, it's such a bad question, but do you believe, I guess, that anyone who's currently publishing a book has already released a large part of their content through one of their social media feeds?
I think, first, let me see if I can break this down. The first question you asked, what do I need to buy the book? No, I don't need to buy the book, because in my opinion, the book does a couple of things. So the book might be inspirational. I can find inspiration for free. About the particular topic, here's the danger of having the topic, is I can, these days, and with the way PLNs work and stuff, I can get instruction and examples for free. Now, here's the thing about buying the book. You know, I'm not a big book buyer. You know that, right? Okay, so, but I have recently purchased some books, and I believe I've purchased those books because I've found some kind of amazement or real connection to what the author was trying to sell me by getting me to buy the book. And then I bought the book, I read the book, and I still feel good about buying the book, because for me, it's not just a one and done. I'm going to revisit, I'm going to refer to it, I'm going to consult with it. So I don't just see the book as like, it's taught me something, I put it away. I see the book as I evolve, I will continue to go to the book to jog my memory or to inspire me in one way or another. So, but if we're looking just at EDU, just straight up EDU, I don't need to buy the book. I feel like I can find whatever's in that book, I can find elsewhere. And, you know, like if it is coding or if it is VR, I know people who do VR all the time. I can just hit them up with an email and say, listen, I want to get serious with this. How much time can you give me? Where can you refer me to show you that I'm serious? I want to give this some real time. And the people I tend to hang out with and talk to are more than happy to help. So I'm good there. That was the first kind of question. The second one, darn, I can't really remember where you were going, but I lost it, Chris. Do you remember how you phrased your question?
Well, it was totally clumsy, but it was just coming back. It was coming. Yeah, it wasn't. It was a ramble than a question. As in, what it comes down to is believing. Do you believe that? I think the part that you didn't get to was just the someone who's releasing a book right now. Are all the Easter eggs already out there for you to find? As in,
I would say at the beginning. Okay, so if I could give it like a timeline, at the start of all this edutainer, edupreneur type stuff, I would say yes, the Easter eggs were hanging around. and people just didn't look for them or didn't have time. Because before these books, people were blogging like crazy, right? Like there are some blogs out there that are amazing. They have everything you need. Everything you need is at their blog, but you're not going to sit there and sift through it, or you don't even know it exists or whatever, right? So I believe in the beginning of this whole edupreneur thing, and if Peter Skillen was sitting beside me, he might tell me this has always been a thing. He'd look at me like, "Oh, young Padawan, you don't know that this has been happening for hundreds of years. You're just because you're not aware." So I don't know how long it's been happening, but like in terms of my head, I remember a time when blogging was huge, and so some of these edupreneurs, their stuff's just there. Their secret sauce, secret recipe. Now maybe since they've removed it because they've realized, hey, if I'm selling this, I can't have people just go and find it for nothing, which is fine. These days, I believe that some of the Easter eggs in those books are not online. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. If I'm a big follower of Chris Clough and I'm loving everything you put down, okay? I don't want to ask Roland about VR. I want your book. I've met you. I think you're a really authentic dude. I like the way you operate. I feel like I'm inspired by your message. Then I'm buying your book, and I'm getting the Easter eggs in the book that I'm not going to find anywhere else. But if I don't particularly need the Chris Clough brand, I don't need to know about the Easter eggs, because 6 of my friends in my district who do this kind of work are going to help me get started, and then I'm going to build my own fluency, right? I'm not going to need you to make me fluent. I'm going to do it myself. And so does it matter that the Easter eggs are in there? Not really. Not to me, they're not. And I like to think I like to think, like when people say to me, "Hey, do you have any book recommendations?" I'll tell them, "Well, here are the books I've read." And they're like, "That's it?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's it," because I'm not a big book reader. But these are the books that I felt attached to enough to separate myself from my funding, my money, to buy the book. And this is what it did for me. Like um, somebody recently asked me as a teacher, what is a great, um, what is a great book for me to read? And that kills me every time, because I think as a teacher, you really need the experience in the classroom to get an idea of your flow and how you operate. So there is a book actually, um, that I really love as an educator. And it's more of a philosophical book to get you thinking about who you are as an educator. But I'm not that guy that I'm not that guy that's going to have like a library full of books about teaching, and each one of them each one of them is like, oh, you got to have this and you got to have that. That's not me. That might be you. I don't know. It's not me. Um, but that's my take. So when people come at me, I don't really refer them to books. I refer them to websites or to blogs or to people that I hope will help out. So yeah, Easter eggs, I don't care. I don't care. And the topic, especially in our EDU sphere, the topic's irrelevant. I can find information about that topic from anybody. And the more you tell me I'm not going to find what I'm looking for, chances are I'm going to keep digging and I'm going to find what I'm looking for. There's one particular educator, I won't name names, because this person, this person's doing their best to sell anything that comes out of their head. And it's like,
Are they still
I
in
can,
public education, or they're in the hustle? They're fully out.
I don't know if they're fully out,
Okay.
and they're American,
Okay.
so it's like the whole Canadian thing doesn't apply. But everything that comes out of their mouth, I feel they want to get paid for. And on the one hand, it's like, get a job. Do you want to get paid? Get a job. I don't think they want a job. I think they want to get paid for not doing anything except like talking about their ideas. But which is fine if you can make it happen. But the more you tell me you're not going to tell me about whatever unless I pay you, I can show you that I can go out and find what I need and not pay you a cent. So it's a little bit of that. It's like militant. It's like, no, I refuse to talk to you unless you pay me. Okay, well, I'm not paying you. And I'm still going to go and find a ton of information about the same topic from people who are going to give it to me for free. And I'm more than happy to give them information for free. I have a blog. It's not the best blog in the world, but when I do something that I feel is of value in my classroom to my students and to my learning, to their achievement, their feeling of success, I blog it. And there it is. It's there. It's free. That's just me. That's just me, and I guess my old school mentality of, hey, you want to make money, get a job. And I realize that in this day and age, you don't have to have a job the way that, we grew up thinking you had to have a job. Now you can have an idea and you can market your idea and try to sell it, and that's great. But I feel like there's a lot of sheep. And if, every person I met said to me, no, I have a real connection to this individual, then that'd be the end of the discussion, because I know what that's like. When I have a connection with somebody in their message, I'm willing to buy their stuff, and I've done it. I don't have a lot of books. I'll give you, I'm gonna send a shout out here to John Spencer.
Mhm.
John Spencer has written a couple of books, and he's got one that it's on pre-order now if you want it. And I have found John to be very open in discussing his ideas, in discussing the content in his publications with people who ask. In fact, um, what's got me thinking about John is John put out a really cool infographic of the idea of innovation, what it is. And in my school board right now, I'm on a subcommittee that's doing some work around innovation in our school board. And one of the members of the committee saw the graphic and said, wow, this would be cool for us to include in our work. I said, hey, let me ask John if we can use it. And it was simple. Hey, John, this is what I'm part of. This is what we're doing. We would love to use your graphic. He said, yeah, go for it. Have fun. Like, not, oh, I'm going to say no unless you pay me. There was none of that. It was, sure, go for it. And I feel as though he's being reasonable. Sure, he's written books. Sure, he wants to sell his books. I get that. And I bought one of his books. And I'm willing to buy more of his books if they to more to support him, because he's been supporting me. So for me, it's all tangled up, with the actual person, the human. Um, I've also purchased a book. I won't name the author. It's not in EDU. It's outside of EDU. I purchased a book, read the book, was like really into the content. Really, it really hit me at an emotional level. Contacted the author, and I feel like the author was a bit of a jerk. And okay, maybe I caught the author on a bad day, bad month. I don't know, but it doesn't change my feelings for the content in the book, but I certainly won't be purchasing another book from that author. So for me, it's tangled up. It's kind of complicated. But John Spencer, he's writing books, but he's on Twitter and he's constantly interacting with people, and I'm seeing he's providing people with information that they could have gotten from the book. He's not saying to them, well, buy my book, it's in the book. He's not doing that. So to me, it just, well, here I am talking about him, right? And I don't really have anything negative to say about his marketing or his interaction with people that I've seen, right? I don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but when somebody comes and says, hey, my district wants to use your infographic for part of our work, he could have easily been like, no, you can pay for that. Send them an email to send me an email here, and we'll negotiate what it might cost you to use this infographic or this cartoon. He could have done that. But I mean, his idea is already out. You put it out there for free. If we really wanted to take the essence of your idea, I guess we could. And we kind of already are talking about the essence of that idea. So it's not like, we grabbed yours and said, oh, we stole this. It's like, it can get very messy. So instead of being militant, be a little bit open, be a little bit kind, engage with people. I would consider him an edupreneur. I wouldn't consider him an edutainer. I think there's a difference. There are some edutainers right now who are going hard, right? You and I talked about this before we started. There are some edutainers who they show you the pictures of them getting on their airplane, but they won't show you the seat right beside the bathroom in the back.
That they're sitting in economy.
They won't show you that, right? Because that then ruins the whole thing for you. For the viewer, oh, look, this guy's getting on an airplane. He's going to another state to do a talk for a whack of teachers. What a life, right? But you're not seeing that they got on the airplane at 6:30 in the morning because it's a cheaper flight. They're not showing you where they're sitting on the plane or what they're eating on the plane. They didn't buy anything on the plane. They've got their sandwich and their nuts in a backpack. And they're going to pull it out and drink it because they got it for next to nothing, And then they're not going to show you that the minute they were done their talk, they got right back on the airplane. They didn't stay for the night in a nice swanky hotel because they had to get back to work because they still have a day job.
That is the funny thing about the teacher gaze, though. The things that we've come to expect to see in social media and blog posts from educators. I mean, there's a whole list of tropey images that really aren't ground shaking, but you realize that they're missing if they're not there. Showing whiteboards, showing computers, like there's a whole list of things that kind of fall into that reinforce the fact that the reader is looking at something that is about EDU. What's been added to the list lately, which makes it confusing, are these educators or former educators that are posting what are closer to lifestyle pictures without actually revealing anything about the lifestyle. And I think it miscommunicates. If we go back to where we were starting about the actual hustle of having to do entrepreneurship or edpreneurship, there's a whole lot of suffering that goes in there. I have to imagine, like, if you are spending, my brother-in-law, he's a salesperson. He's a salesperson manager for he's down in Arizona, and his sales area is like multi-state. He spends a lot of time traveling. And on the inside, like, I know the cost. We've had conversations about impact on family, impact on self, on wellness, all that kind of stuff. When I think about what connects me either to someone's book or the product that they're selling, is that I have a bit of an understanding of what it takes to get there. And if you're just sort of like pushing the veneer, like I don't myself, I'm not your market. I don't feel the compulsion to listen to you, to, like, I'm mute, block. I'm just like, I don't gain anything from that. And it's a funny space where, if to be a Twitter star or Twitter celeb, we now firmly have, I think, educators that exist in that sphere. Like that is why they're popular, is because of what they're able to promote through the persona, and not necessarily because people know enough about them or that feel that there's a person behind it. And if people are hustling to buy, if you're buying someone's book on education solely because, if you're buying someone's book solely because you've seen all the trailers, Well, I would argue that that's kind of a dangerous way to develop your teaching practice. It's not in the same way, like if you've never seen a Star Wars movie, ever, you have no clue about Star Wars, you might be investing in something, a future of interest, by going to see a Star Wars movie. Like you're stepping into a franchise. But the only cost is your $13 to you. There's no, or $14, whatever it costs, and maybe your lost time. There's no deeper impact apart to your, your personal time in your wallet. But if you're using that same kind of mentality to develop your educational practice, there is a cost, because you're going to put these things in front of other teachers, other educators. You're going to sort of convince people that you won't even have to work to convince people, because you're already in a position of power. So you can take this thing that you just experienced in a one-off in a conference without really having any depth of understanding to it, take it to the classroom. And I'm not saying you're going to inflict damage, but I don't know if you'll create progress. There's a sort of bug-light kind of element to this, that there's the allure, but there's some real danger there. You don't want to get too close to it, because, you could get zapped.
Well, here's the marketing piece, right, that I enjoy so much. So we were talking about this, and it's good to have you as a soundboard. I appreciate it when you push back on what I'm thinking, or when you're like, hey, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. You see these pictures, right? But you're not getting the full picture. And people don't want to see the picture. People don't want to know that you're sitting in economy, or that you got the
Dude,
worst seat
that's
on
the
the
teacher
plane.
gaze. That's the teacher gaze.
That-
It's basically feeding us back the point of view that triggers us to stay connected to that individual,
That's
not
right.
not to create any sort of like revulsion. Revulsion's not good in marketing.
No,
unless
it's
you're
not.
unless you're marketing the ill effects of cigarettes and vaping, right? Like there's not a, you want to sell that book, it doesn't work that great. Sorry, I cut you there.
No, but that's just, why aren't people seeing that? I guess it's so awesome to see the glamour shots, right? It's also like the outside of the grind. Every day, a classroom teacher will tell you their work is not easy. But getting on a plane and going to talk to somebody about what you're passionate about is easier, or at least it appears to be.
Hmm.
Trust me, I'm willing to admit that anybody who can craft a good keynote, that's awesome. Like, and it takes work, because I know somebody who took time to be a keynoter. It took work. It was a full-time thing to do it right. Some of these people aren't even doing it right. They're just going out there and just talking about their experience, which is fair, but it's not the same as crafting. And hey, let me tell you, I'd be more apt. Like, when I think of myself, if I was a speaking guy, if I was an edutainer, I'm telling you right now, my shtick would be a Q&A format.
Hmm.
I don't want to stand in front of you and talk to you for 30 minutes about the same trope day in and day out. Because, as hopefully, if I'm still in the classroom, I'm seeing things, I'm experiencing things which are gonna fuel my perspective at the time and the answers to whatever questions you have. So for me, I might start with a blurb about, hey, this is who I am, this is where I've come from, this is what's kind of gotten me here, and hope that over time that blurb slightly changes, because there's nothing worse than someone saying, I heard you speak 2 years ago and you have the same introduction. There's two ways of looking at that. The one way is, well, this is who I am, so obviously it's not going to change. And the other perspective is, well, time has passed and things have happened to change my perspective or my opinion on certain topics. And here I am today. This is who I am today. I'm more for the person who changes over time, not the person who remains the same, because there's nothing worse than seeing a speaker for the fourth time and you know the stories that they're going to tell you and you know how everything's going to come out. I'm sorry, that kills me every time.
But you got to look at yourself in the mirror as the audience member. Like I think you really do have to ask your question, like, what's my purpose here? If I am sitting and listening to the same keynote that I've noticed before, and this has happened where I've seen some of my colleagues that have done this, that have done some of the Google circuit, and they've given same keynotes in multiple places. There's one question. One question is, why is this keynote important to this particular context, the school, the convention center, the city that it's in? The second question that I would say is you ask yourself, why is it important for me to be here? I can make that far more detailed, but that really is. And if it isn't important for you to be there, don't be there. You vote with your feet. Go to a different session. Go sit at a table and talk with someone. Go out into the foyer and see if there's people there that are kind of just gathering around a table talking about a topic that lights you up. I sat with there was one of those conferences that there was a keynote talking, and I walked out and actually found two other individuals still sitting in the cafeteria in a conversation about a topic. Now, the two individuals, I didn't even know they knew each other. They were talking about a topic, and I just landed down. I said, can I join you? And then we ended up having a conversation parallel to the keynote speaker, because I'd already heard the keynote speaker. I'd already heard parts of that conversation. I'd seen some of those parts of those conversation live. I'd also seen it posted on the web. So I had a pretty good handle on it. And my emotional synchronicity with the group of loving it wasn't important. I didn't need to sort of feel that sort of like that connectivity to the person beside me, like, oh my gosh, this is so hot. Like, I didn't need that electricity. I need an opportunity to talk out ideas, which I found someone out in the, like I said, they were still sitting in the cafeteria table. So they were optimizing the space, knowing that there'd be a lot of interesting people there. Like, that's why they were sort of saying, I've come to this conference because I know there's going to be cool people to talk to. And also at the same time, denying the reality that what's being presented is for everybody, because it isn't. And I take, my colleagues' books and websites with the same note. Like, if it's not for me, I'm not the type to necessarily call out someone unless it's so extreme. Like, if someone's if I just disagree with the product and they're publicizing their product, I'm like, okay, well, let them publicize it. But yeah, I think you ask yourself, why is this particular speaker speaking in this space? And why am I sitting in this space listening to this speaker? And if it is the same speech, I guess you could take one step further and say, why is it that someone decided that the same speech that was given in Chatham could be given in Ottawa? Like, how does that really take into account the context and the people that are sitting in the room? But you and I have talked about this, like what the shelf life of a keynote is, and whether or not you actually should be giving the same keynote over and over and over again, or if it's a one and done. Imagine if it was one and done.
Oh, some of these people would die. It'd be over for them. Because
the ticket just wouldn't be punched anymore. Like, they'd have no book.
I'm telling you, some of these people, I think some of them push the life of a keynote, because it's hard to put one together. But here's the problem. When you put a good one together, all that good is gone the minute someone like me sees that you're doing the same one over here that you did over here. I mean, you can slightly change it. Like, so what's going to happen is, somebody writes a book and they go out on the circuit. They're going to be, they might be in Toronto one day and London, Ontario the next. And maybe you're lucky that in Toronto you were able to see them because your district paid for you to go. But the London one's on a Saturday and you've paid to go to that PD. And so you run into this person again and you sit down and you hear the exact same thing that you heard last month. I guess there is some, I'll give that some leeway, because, I don't think it'd be very difficult to have a different keynote for every single time you stood up in front of people to talk. So I'll give you that, right? Because
I agree with the impossibility.
I'm giving you, like, that's me. I couldn't do that. If somebody said to me, hey, we're going to give you this much money for these 5, over the next 5 months, you're going to do 10 talks. Each talk has to be different. I'd be like, then let's do the Q&A thing. Because I don't know what's going to come at me in a Q&A. I don't know. I can have 10 different intros. I can have 10 different, like, this is who I am, this is what I've done, this is what I'm about. You give a little tidbit in each one of those 10, so it's slightly different. But then, hey, let them come at me. Let them come at me. Hey, you did this, or I read this on your blog post, or you're known for this. Can you tell me about that? Or push back. You did this. I don't believe that it worked, or whatever. Okay, let's talk about that. I feel like that would be more useful to me. What are keynotes? I think they're about inspiration. I think they're about motivation. That's what I think they're about. They go for the gut. They go for your emotion. I guess I'm just not interested in that. I can give you a little something at each one of my talks that will pull at your emotional strings. I can do that. I don't want to.
I would, to our 25 listeners, subscribers, but just as a matter of practice, I would challenge anybody going to an event where there is a keynote to, and maybe a lot of people do this. But I don't know. Check online and see if their keynote is already posted, or check online and see if any of their previous talks are posted. If the content doesn't, if it rings deeply with you, you can still ask another critical question: is, do I want to spend my time to see this reframed tomorrow? Because I'll put to myself, someone paid $300 or I paid $300 to be at that convention. Do you want to spend your time listening to the thing that is widely available online? You might feel you need reinforcement. You might feel like there's an opportunity to meet the person directly. You might feel like there'll be a different nuance to it because it's being presented in your district and not somebody else's. But I think that's still a really great on-ramp to any conference, is that, are you checking out the speakers ahead of time, or are you going because everyone needs to be herded into ballroom C for the keynote? And if you are good with their content and you say to yourself, I don't need to sit through an hour keynote on it, how would your time be better spent? So, where are the campfires outside ballroom 22? I know I just changed the ballroom, but outside the ballroom, where are the campfires where you can sit and deal with some of your burning questions, as opposed to sitting through, the TV dinner that's being rewarmed for you in the microwave? Because if it isn't fresh stuff for you, I would say, why spend your time? Why do it? And the same thing with the book. Where are the campfires working through the book content, as opposed to buying the book when you can sort of get through socials or publicly available blog sites, book review sites? This isn't me totally crashing source material. I think they're just good questions to ask yourself if you're going to sit there and consume it in a way that, if you have the intent to bring it back to your classroom, such a small part of what you're bringing back to the classroom exists in that 1 hour, 60-minute event. It's all the other stuff that kind of evolves and grows out of it. You had a thought.
My thought was book studies, book talks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more apt to pay for a book if I'm going to be part of the campfire component of it, where people read the chapter and then get together and discuss what they read, how it resonates with them, what might work, what might not work. I'm more apt to be involved with something like that. In fact, one of the books I have from an edutainer, the only reason I bought it was because I was invited to participate in the book talk, and I valued the people in the talk. So I bought the book. So for me, I wasn't paying $25 for the book. I was paying $25 to be part of an experience that involved the book. And I think with the people that were involved, I probably could have participated in the book talk without the book, like just by listening to them talk and then responding with my lived experience, or my needs, or my innovations coming from what they're saying. I think I probably still could have participated. I think anybody could, but you got me thinking now about, like, the intentionality of spending my money to buy a book within the EDU frame. And I would argue that the books I've purchased aren't even in EDU's category. They're from outside. Because that's the other thing too. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of what's happening in EDU right now with like the pushing. Like AR and VR is huge right now. So it's getting a huge push. Man, I was doing VR like 5 years ago. A lot of people were. And now all of a sudden it's got some legs under it. More so than it did 5 years ago, right? Before, I think we're coming close to the end of our time, but before we go, something that kind of wraps all this up nicely is the article that Audrey Waters wrote recently that you brought my attention to. And I'm bringing it up here. She wrote, come on. She wrote a piece called The 100 Worst EdTech Debacles of the Decade. And I'm really happy that you passed this on to me, because as I was reading it, I had a big smile on my face for two reasons. Reason number one was I really feel like she did a good job of hitting on the really big ones, and she did not tiptoe around any of it. She just said it. She's like, well, here's this one, and this is what everybody thought it was going to be. This is what it ended up being. And I was like, good for her. So thanks for being honest with them. And then the other part of my smile was that I've actually engaged in some of these debacles, as she would put it. And which makes me smile because part of me sees like the embarrassing side of being part of the debacle, but then part of me also sees the good stuff that came from it, because part of these debacles have led to my growth, right? They've led to some really interesting years in the classroom with my students. And I got to tell you, man, like having been in the classroom now for 18 years, you got to have some wild good times in there, or else you can't survive, right? And so I have to say that a lot of these things that have happened in the past decade that she calls out brought me joy, brought my students joy, led them to some growth and achievement, and the same for me. So it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one side of the sword, you're getting ripped apart, but on the other side of the sword, you're the one ripping things apart and having some fun with it. So I enjoyed that. And I'm actually having some fun with it currently. I changed my Twitter profile picture, and I've had some comments about it. Like, people are devastated that it's a Roland from years ago with a very small beard, and it's nothing like who I am today.
It's lowercase
But
Roland.
It brings a smile to my face. I'm having some fun here. Isn't this what we're supposed to be doing? Having a little bit of fun. So, anyway.
The thing that I loved that because I haven't been tracking and reflecting for 10 years, like nearly as long as Audrey has. Like she's been writing about education for a while in some pretty wide circles. Like her sort of command of these ideas it's impressive. It's impressive, like what she's sort of drawn together and the things she kind of observes and the people that she has access to talk about this stuff. What I kind of appreciated is that as I was going through the list, I love that you and I have kind of landed on a few of these. Like there were some things that you and I have had cool combos on, and it's not that I'm attributing any sort of like gold medal to Audrey, but I'm not putting her up sort of like, I'm not lionizing her not necessarily, but just pointing out that other people are kind of noticing some of the stuff that you and I are noticing. Because there is stuff in here that we've talked about woven into our conversations. And there's stuff in here that we still kind of play with, like you said, like your dip into Google Glass hasn't really stopped because you've still had some interest in the local company that's releasing this. So it hasn't, like, you still kind of have your eye on this thing, despite the fact that in mass marketing, her hot take is that, and the research is that it didn't work out so great the first time around. So there's always a little bit of that element of it didn't work well. I mean, there's 100 things here, right? But it didn't work well the first time. But you and I have both seen that stuff kind of cycles back around, and the second or third iteration is the one that sticks.
And exactly what you're saying is that you have to look at it from your lens. So like you said, like the Google Glass thing, it had me hook, line, and sinker. But the thing that saves me, if you will, is that we're still talking about it today. Years later, in one form or fashion, we're still talking about using a technology like that to benefit people in some way, shape, or form. And so I would say that, you should, if you're an educator, you should read this article. It's interesting, but be critical too. Like, just because she said Google Glass was here and it didn't survive doesn't mean that I don't have to. Like, it doesn't mean, oh, Audrey said it's over, so it's over. No, not for you and I. How many times you can find it? Anybody who wants to find it's on the podcast. We've talked about, uh, the eyewear empathy engines is what we call it. Um, we've been talking about it forever. We've got lots of great ideas for something like this, and there are businesses and people who are trying to make smart glasses to do different things, to make your life easier and stuff like that. So it's not dead in the water. It's just within education. It was interesting. Something that stuck with me in what she said was basically like teachers. She kind of wonders, why are teachers so open to being influenced this way? And it's a great question, right? Because they put it down, and we picked it up like it was nobody's business. She talks about Google for Education. I'm a fan of Google for Education, but she says right in her article, hey, they let you have it for free, but they're mining that data, and you don't really know what they're doing with that data. They tell you what their parameters around mining it, but there have been lawsuits against them for certain things. And hey, I get it. I get it. And I'm not running the show. I'm not the one making the decisions at the top. But I can tell you that I've had really good experiences with that product. I'm a Google certified innovator. So I'm part of that education ecosystem, and I would say at a high
Oh,
level.
I like what you said there, the first one, the education ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm part of that arm, you know.
Not eco, ego
Ego.
with a G. That's what I was like. That's what I heard, and then you sort of clarified the C. Sorry, I like
No,
that
that's
word. I think that
interesting.
might be our new hashtag.
Ecosystem.
Are you part of the edu ecosystem?
And well, that's huge. I'm not going to go there right now, though, because I kind of want to finish my thought on the education ecosystem that Google, I'm part of it.
Yep.
So I'm not going to deny that I'm part of it. I'm part of it. I'm part of the Microsoft one too. Where are my needs? Some of my needs are in education. Some of them are in the ecosystem for sure. Having said that, though, it's brought me a lot of value. And so anyway, I read about some of these blunders, and I think, yeah, that was a blunder. I'm still part of some of them that she considers, dead in the water. I don't consider them dead in the water, but it's an interesting take. And for me, it shows that I'm open enough to read what she's written and to reflect on my practice and what it means to me. That's cool. Everybody's going to do that. Um, but anyway, so it was a good read, made me laugh. I'm still chuckling at different parts of it. Um, it's good stuff, man. I'm open to it. EDU ecosystem. I love it, Chris. That's why some of these uh, edutainers are out there, because that ecosystem is a lot stronger than the work that they were doing in their classroom, right? It's meeting a need somehow in some way. So that's where I'm gonna put I'm gonna put the mic down. I'm gonna let you mount up and finish this off.
I'm all good. I'm all good. I think we can wrap it on that. Happy to be back. Thanks for the convo, dude.
Same to you.
You want to see the
good.
pick?
Yeah, I want to see the pick.
Okay.
Oh, 2020. Is that an Easter egg?
You found it.
I found it. Look, it's free.
I could put yeah, I know it's a totally. I could put like some. Should I put some Easter egg coloring on it or just leave it as is?
You do what you want. My only suggestion, what would make it really cooler for me, is if you put a price tag on it. If it's a Decoded podcast Easter egg, then the price is $0.
That's true.
Right?
All right, I'll think it through. Cool, man. That's all the bits for this week.
Thanks, buddy. It was a good one.
For sure.
Good luck on Monday.
Yeah, you too, man. I'll check in with you this week. Best wishes to you and yours in the new year. And,
same to you.
Take care, man.
Yeah, my hands are off, buddy.
Oh, safe hands, safe hands.